Hello and welcome to this special Kerlan Award presentation that is taking place as part of the 2021 Twin Cities Book Festival. I'm Eric Lorber, the director of Rain Taxi. We're a nonprofit organization that champions aesthetically adventurous literature. And if you don't yet know much about us, I invite you to check out our website anytime after this event to learn more about our quarterly magazine of critical writing and all the other great programs we produce to help drive readers to where writing is going. This event is such a delight because we love partnering with the Kerlan, passionate advocates for children's literature. They, in fact, are sponsoring the ASL interpreting access we have available today and at our other children's literature events that are a part of this festival. So thank you so much. This event, like most of our events, is free to view, but if you are able to pitch in, please feel free to use the donate button at the bottom of your screen. Some funding for this festival comes from the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council and the Minnesota State Arts Board, but our most vital support always comes from individual readers. Whether you're a one-time giver or you want to become a member and stay in touch with Rain Taxi year-round, we are grateful for your support. The Kerlan is also an organization that accepts support from readers, and we're going to pop a link to their beautiful website in our chat column too. And if you haven't seen it, boy, are you in for a treat. Don't forget there are other ways to participate while you're on screen with us tonight. That chat column is a great place to share your observations and comments. And if you have a question for the authors, put that in the ask a question box, and we'll get to those toward the end of the presentation. You'll also notice there's a buy books button on your screen. And if you want to buy books that Ariane Dewey has worked on, you'll be able to get those from our dear friends at Red Balloon Bookshop, a great independent store here in the Twin Cities. It's now my pleasure to turn this special presentation of the Kerlan Award over to Lisa German, Dean of the University of Minnesota Libraries.
Thank you so much, Eric, and welcome, and thank you all for coming. I'm Lisa German, Dean of the Libraries, and I'm excited that we're partnering with the Rain Taxi Twin Cities Book Festival to introduce you to the recipient of our 2021 Kerlan Award. Our recognition of excellence fits so well into this celebration of books, book arts, and book lovers. The Kerlan Award and our Kerlan collection of children's literature are named in honor of Dr. Irvin Kerlan, a children's book collector whose donation established the foundation of our internationally recognized collections. The Kerlan contains more than 100,000 children's books, original manuscripts, correspondence, artworks, galleys, color proofs, and other production materials by more than 1,700 authors and illustrators. We are so proud of this growing collection. Today, you'll meet Kerlan Award winner Ariane Dewey, who is a renowned illustrator of children's books. We are honoring her achievements in children's literature and also her generous donations of unique materials to the Kerlan collection. Ariane will be introduced and interviewed by Lisa Vondrasek, curator of the children's collection. Before we begin, I'd like to share a perspective that's important to all of us. The University of Minnesota Twin Cities is built within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. It's important to acknowledge the peoples on whose land we live, learn, and work, as we seek to improve and strengthen our relationships with tribal nations. We also acknowledge that words are not enough. We must ensure that our institution provides support, resources, and programs that increase access to all aspects of higher education for American Indian students, staff, faculty, and community members. So thank you. And now let's hear about the Kerlan Award and Ariane Dewey from Lisa Vondrasek. Lisa?
Well, thank you, Lisa German. What a thrill it is to be here with Ariane Dewey today. I'm just going to let everyone know what's going to happen is I'm going to show some slides, and they're going to direct our conversation, because that's what this is today. It's an amazing opportunity to hear the process of children's book art, the history of printmaking, and to hear from Ariane how her work is made, and what a wonderful opportunity it is to honor it with the Kerlan Award. So I'm going to get going right here. And hopefully you're seeing a picture of Ariane Dewey and Jose Owego. And that's how we kind of think of Ariane. We think of her in partnership with Jose and the books. I was having the hardest time. Ariane, I'm going to ask you a question right away. Ariane, how many books have you published?
Oh, goodness. I think Jose and I did about 65 books together. And then I think 10 of those, I think we wrote and illustrated. And the other ones were books we illustrated that other people wrote. And then I did about 10 books that I wrote and illustrated myself.
Because I went online and I stopped counting after 80, because I don't think you're counting. I don't think you're counting all the iterations, like the bath books and the novelty books and things like that. So yeah. I just want to say I could not get a definitive number. So it's at least over 70 books you've done.
Yes.
And
yes.
So here's just a range of some of those books. And I think contemporary people would really know Antarctic Antics, one of my favorite read alouds if you're a teacher. Whose Mouse Are You? Five Little Ducks, the Rafi Song. I mean, just so many wonderful, wonderful books, a definitive, unique style. And one of the things when I think about all of these books, I think of that the two of you have an amazing history and process. So this is the two of you in 1972. And I was contacted by you at the Kerlan collection. I had recently started there, came from New York City at the Bank Street College of Education. Jose had died, and you contacted us to see if we were willing to accept materials. Do you remember that phone call?
Yes, I do.
and I was like, nah, I don't think so. Was that what I said? What was my response?
I think you said, yes, you would. I was very relieved because we had a lot of material, and Jose and I had always, a lot of people sold, single pictures. And I thought it was much more important to keep the whole books together and not sell individual pieces. So we agreed not to sell anything unless either of us really, really needed the money. And so we had all of the original art for all of the books. And I had wanted that they should go into an archive, and Jose and I talked about it, but he was always reorganizing things. And so until after he died, then I decided, because then there was all of the things that he had, that it really was time for it to go somewhere safe. So Kerlan was one of the places.
We are a very safe place, and I just do want to mention that Leo the Late Bloomer is probably the most famous of your books. So I just wanted to mention that. And this is from the School Library Journal obituary, and I love that they mentioned the signature style of vibrant, colorful style depicting Leo the tiger cub who learns to speak, draw, and write at his own pace. And here's the cover of Leo the Late Bloomer. And the elephant in the room for me, so I'm just going to bring this up now, is Ariane. It says pictures by Jose Oego. Can you give me a little background to why your name isn't on this book?
Well, I don't know. Jose thought that having a husband and wife working together sounded not very professional or something. And so he, I don't know, when we started working, the first book that we did was called The King and His Friends. And the king's name was King Dua. Dua was the name of our son Juan's security blanket. And we wrote that story together, and Jose illustrated, and that was one of the books that didn't have very much color in it, because I think we only were allowed to have two colors, black and red or something. But anyway, Jose and I, we're both artists, and he liked to paint, or he liked to draw, and I liked to paint, and so we worked on it together, and it came out, and then that was the first of many, many books. But the first ones somehow didn't have my name on them. And finally, in the beginning, it didn't really matter. But then when it got to the point where I was sort of working full time illustrating, and people were asking me what I was doing, I wanted to say yes, that I was illustrating and we were working together.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to also mention, we know that Leo the late bloomer was a perennial, because if you just Google that, there's over 95,000 hits. People, they use it in graduation speeches and to encourage kids, and especially now during COVID times, people who, quote, feel that children are being left behind. This gives them a little cheering up that nobody really is left behind. And Nickelodeon Magazine, I just wanted to mention this because I was working for Nickelodeon in 2002, and there was a survey of children's book authors of what book would they choose to share with children that was not their own. And Eric Carle chose Leo the Late Bloomer. And the reason is because he was one. And
that's so great.
And Ariane, I want you to talk a little bit about your background. You went to school for art?
Yes, I grew up painting. My mother loved artists and loved art, and she and we used to go and paint together when we were traveling or just walking, and then I went to I majored in art at Sarah Lawrence, and actually Jose and I studied with the same professor. I at Sarah Lawrence, and he at Pratt Institute. And I studied painting, and Jose didn't like painting himself. He liked drawing. And late in life, he became an incredible calligrapher. But anyway, Leo, Robert Krauss wrote Leo the Late Bloomer, and Leo is the name for a lion. But when I started working on the artwork, lions are just, nice tan color, but I thought it would be much more fun if Leo had stripes and was a tiger. So most tigers aren't called Leo, but anyway, that's how Leo got his name and came to be who he was. And this is the kind of thing I would do practice. Jose do drawings, and then I'd do paintings to see how it was going to come out. Well, this is probably original art for the final, I'm not sure.
Yes.
But so yes, in this I did full color painting for the whole book, which was a joy, because a lot of the books were done with color separation, which I guess I'll explain later, but Leo was in full color.
So this shows you the color proofs and the colors. And I really like that we have an archive of your notes, so we can see that you're having a discussion about this, that the proof, one of the proofs, the red was too dark and muddy and it didn't sparkle. You had a criticism.
Well, it was wonderful fun because in the beginning, I used to go with the art director, and we would go on press when the book was printed, and when they would print the first sheet, then we would make corrections, and we'd make the red darker or lighter, or the blue. We could change the color slightly. And make corrections on the proof sheets before they ran the final copies.
So Leo got fabulous reviews, and but most of the books that during that time that you were creating were the color separation process, the pre-separated art. Can you talk a little bit? Ava Weiss, who was the art director at Green Willow and before that at Macmillan, spoke publicly that she thought you were a genius, that you were able to do this work, which many artists couldn't be children's book artists because they couldn't see it in their mind's eye. Can you talk about how this book, Chicken Duckling, was extremely special to your career because it went from 3-color to the 4-color process?
Well, what happened with the color separations was I'd have to make if there were 3 colors, I made 3 different pages for each spread. And I'd do one in yellow and one in red and one in blue. And so, but then I had to paint it because those colors don't photograph, particularly yellow, don't photograph very well. So those had to be done in gray. So I had all sorts of wonderful charts that showed me if I wanted a certain color of orange, that I needed to use 75% yellow and 30% red. But I had for every color you can imagine charts showing the percentages. Then I would paint that in gray. So I'd use the 20, the 30% of one and the 50% of the other. And so what ended up was that all of this ended up being in my head.
Hey, no, turn it off.
Showing the percentages. And I never saw the books in color until they were printed. So it was kind of exciting to go to the printer because all of this had been done in my head. Oh, here are Susan Hirschman and Ava Weiss in the middle, and Libby Schub on the left. Libby was our editor for many, many books, and Ava the art director. And they were very supportive.
Well, they were very supportive, but I need you to tell the story of how your name ended up on the books.
Well, it was so funny because Jose was doing the books, and so he was going to the publishers, and then he'd come home. And since I was a painter and he liked to draw and I liked to paint, so I, started painting from the very beginning. And the books we wrote together, and we would talk them back and forth and write them down. But then when they started with the color separation, I said, Jose came home and said, you have to color separate. I said, what's that? I don't know how to color separate. I said, you have to ask them. So I would tell Jose questions that he had to ask the art director, and she'd give him answers, and he'd come home and tell me. And I said, well, that doesn't quite answer the whole questions. But anyway, I learned sort of third hand how to do color separation. And then finally, there was a book that was quite complicated, and there was a problem. And I explained it to Jose, but he didn't really quite get it. And he said, well, okay, you better come and tell them. So we went to Macmillan, and Jose didn't, we got there, and he said to Ava and Susan and Libby, this is my wife, Ariane. But he didn't say that I was working on the books. So they looked at me like, what on earth kind of a wife is that goes with her husband to his business meetings? So I sat in a corner, and they discussed the book, and finally it came to the problem. And so I piped up and said, well, this is what the problem is. And the way I see it, there are 2 or 3 ways to solve it. I could do either this, this, or this, or, and they all looked at me like, what? And they were absolutely flabbergasted that I'd been doing all of the color on the other books. And anyway, so that's how I got to know them, and then we all worked together very closely for a long time.
So they said your name needs to be on the books, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, Jose didn't, I don't know. He never particularly wanted my name on the books. And
well, but in true partnership, the books, the art as we know it wouldn't exist without you. Can we admit that?
Right. It would be colorless.
I know. So moving on. Here's an example of the pre-separated art, of which we hold much of this in the collection. We hold the history of the making of children's books. And so blue or cyan, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then you see the ducks. There's that red or magenta. Now, if I'm teaching, isn't that a problem? Like, how do I explain this when children are saying, students, graduate students ask me, where is the original art? And I say, this is the original art. This is the original art.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that, as I said before, I mean, yellow and some kinds of red don't photograph particularly well as gray does. So if you really want to have a 50% gray or of a color printed, if you do it in gray, you can get a real 50%, where if you do it in red, it's going to come out 70%.
Well, and that's why Ava said you were a genius, because I can't look at this and see the color in my head, but you actually can, right? You can see this as color in your head, in your mind's eye.
I could imagine what the whole thing would look like, and that was what was so strange, was that, I did all of this and 4 times in red and yellow and blue and then the gray, but I could visualize what it was going to look like, but I never saw it until actually it was printed.
So you didn't see this until it came off press?
Yeah.
Yeah, you say that.
I saw Jose's drawing, and I visualized, and I painted it all in gray, but I didn't see it in color until it was actually printed.
And I just want to share with everyone, this is remarkable. This is amazing. This is incredible. So here we have The Chick and the Duckling by Mira Ginsburg, pictures by Jose and Ariane Dewey, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Got my name on there.
Big deal. It's a big deal. I want to talk a little bit about your individual works, and this is one of my favorites, naming colors. Can you talk a little bit of how this came about?
Well, I just love color, obviously, and I got interested in where the names of colors and how colors got their names. And because colors are such an abstract thing, how do you name them? And so I did a lot of research, and I love doing research. And so this book was a lot of fun because I got to do a great deal of research on where the colors and the first two colors in any language are black and white. And there's no language that has a name for only white or only black. It's always black and white, as far as I was ever able to research and find out. And I thought that was fascinating. And then the next color, now I'm trying to think what it is. It's red and yellow and green. Green got a name before blue did, which is interesting. And then I think after that it's pink, and then then it spreads out into all the other names of colors. But colors, lots of colors got their names because they were the color of a fruit. I mean, what better yellow is there than banana, and lemon, and this time of year, pumpkin.
Yes.
And herbs and spices also gave lots of names, and all kinds of foods were then taken for names.
I love that where if people can look, it says vanilla, that vanilla, the color vanilla, we think of as that beigey white, off-white, but you do note that the actual vanilla beans are a blackish brown.
Yeah.
And I never really thought much about that. And this was I gotta say, I just love this. So the whole book is a beautiful volume. You could see the book making in the whole book. And I knew we didn't have time to page through the whole thing, but the index is a masterpiece. How lovely it is to be able to visualize the colors at the same time as if you were looking one up. Damson, we know that's a plum. It's a plum color, and we can go right to that page that gives us the history of that color.
So that was a very fun book to work on.
So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront because of in many interviews. I think I've read about a dozen interviews with you, and each one you talk about growing up and loving color, your work with the books and the printmaking and everything is color. So here is the last group of slides I wanted to show, because when we received your materials at the Kerlan, I did come to New York. I don't often do that, but I did come to help pack like I was a helper person. The biggest help, I want to say thank you to Paul Zielinski, who I think I forgot to tell you he was coming. I'm sorry. But I knew he knew how to pack stuff because I had been in his studio and he had packed stuff for me to carry to the Kerlan. So here's The Littlest Wolf by Larry Dane Brimmer, one of my favorite read-alouds of all time, the perfect early childhood book, illustrated by Jose Owego and Ariane Dewey. Now, when you come to the Kerlan, you get to see the process work. You get to see the color studies. And there were over 18 of these, Ariane, and I don't have all of them scanned, but here's some. So let's talk about this. What they aren't is dated, so I couldn't tell you which came first. I laid them all out. And here we see you experimenting with color, with line, with materials. I think there's some crayon, there's some watercolor, there's pen and ink. There's more watercolor. Some, I don't know what the scribbling is. More crayon. Is there some oil pastel? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's great having living donors so I can ask you these questions. And so you can go through this entire process and see the amount of work for one spread of one book. And our archive has many, many examples of this. But I thought, since this is one of my favorite books, to share these. And this is the finished art. How do you feel about the finished art after you've seen, it's been a couple of years since you've seen all that, right?
Well, I love to see it. was fun to experiment around and, try different colors and, sometimes make the animals purple or, unbelievable type colors, and sometimes keep them closer, the grays of the wolf. But
What I
then
was
there's the bright
surprised
red in the
about,
background.
what I was really surprised about was that the different colors actually expressed emotion. So in some of them, it felt like the big wolf was a little mean, and all you did was change a color or
Yeah.
a line.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm moving to Herman the Helper because that's the first book where your name changes from Ariane to Ariane Dewey. Can you talk a little bit about Herman?
Well, we did a lot of books with Robert Krause, and it was really fun working with him because he was the author, but he was also the editor and the publisher. And so whatever he wanted to do, or what ended up what we wanted to do, if he liked it, was fine. And I think actually Herman the Helper, usually books are printed in 4 colors, red, yellow, blue, and black. But I think Herman the Helper, he gave us 5 colors. So I think we had 2 different reds in Herman, which made it possible to make, richer. One was a very pinky red and one was an orangey red, and mixing, I could mix all sorts of other things with it. So Herman was lots of work, but lots of fun.
I'm including from our archives a letter from Karen Nelson, before she was Karen Nelson Hoyle, requesting you donate to us. So this was way back in 1972. It was the first and only time there was a short list announced for the Caldecott Award. Do you remember this happening? And on the
No.
short list, and I have a letter from the committee chair, from the ALA, saying that there was a short list. It was an experiment, and obviously it failed because they never did it again.
Oh.
And your books, all of these books that year, were on that short list. So it was very interesting. And here's Herman Like to Help. And it got amazing, amazing reviews. Herman the Helper. And there, your name is on the book, but I did notice that you're not mentioned in the review, which really started to make me angry as I started going through our archives, that we see that it says Orego's bright, showy elaborations on the antics, the sinuous candy-colored sea anemones, which I'm pretty sure I can blame you for. Well, blame is the wrong word. I guess we can credit you, Ariane, for those colors. And
I think so.
So I think the result of not having your name on the earlier books gives people the idea that perhaps you were just helping out. And we know that's not true. And I'd like to set the record straight. Can we do that now? Can we set the record
Well,
straight?
thank you. You're my big supporter, and thank you very much.
Because Betsy Bird chose in the top books of all time, of picture books of all time, she chose Leo the Late Bloomer for the illustrations.
Oh.
And for Orego's advancing watercolor to the next level. And so I want you to get credit for advancing watercolor to the next level.
Oh, well, thank you.
And so I know you have very special guests with you in your apartment right now. Can we ask them to join us on camera? Is that possible? Could
Yes,
you introduce
please.
them?
Can you get there? Yes, my son and daughter-in-law, and Juan is the keeper of all of Jose's material that hasn't been given to any archive. And Ariane is a children's book writer and illustrator. So the family business is continuing, and it's...
Okay, lean in, guys. Hi.
Can you
Hi.
see them? I don't see.
Yeah, we're in the box.
Also,
Yep.
Oh,
yeah, you're in the box, and I've met both of you when we were doing the big packing before you were married. I remember that. It was amazing. And now, Ariane, you're a published illustrator author. Is that correct?
yes.
Ariane.
Oh, yeah. They can't.
Question.
How can you make it?
No,
Can you
no,
make the
just
sound come out?
Sadly not, Nora.
Oh,
Ariane,
yes. How many books have you done?
4, and I have a 5th one that comes out next year.
and
Can
what's
you-
the title of your one that's coming out? Just repeat the question.
Okay.
What's the name of the one that just came out?
The last, If You Want a Friend in Washington.
Ah, I do. And you were saying that Juan is the keeper of Jose's materials that have not been donated, or materials that are
Well, letters, I guess, letters, stuff like that. And I think most stuff, actually, most of the artwork, or all of the artwork, really, I think has been donated by this time.
I think that's true, but Ariane, I need you to ask Juan a question.
And some of
We're getting serious now.
Yeah.
Because this is important to me. I don't care if it's not important to you, but it's super important to me.
Here, let me give him the earphone so he can hear
Okay.
your question.
Okay.
I'm actually,
No, put them on. She wants to ask you a
No,
question.
it's you. It's you.
Okay.
You put it on.
okay. Yes, hello.
Okay, this is a setup because I really wanted your mom to ask you the question. But
Okay.
since you're on camera and this is 60 minutes, I think it's really important for the future generations of people who are doing research on your mom and your dad's work to understand that she wasn't just his assistant. It's important to researchers and children's literature people. I know it's not hard because I talked to a lawyer. Could you please promise us that in the next printing of those early books, since you hold the copyright, I know this because I saw the deed of gift, you hold the copyright. Could you get your mother's name on the reprints? Any book that's reprinted, can you get her name on there, please?
I will work on that. Mom mentioned that you guys had been talking about that. Yes, I'd love them. That is a fabulous idea.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Ariane, could you talk some, please?
No, that was a wonderful idea, and it's been great how much you have been supportive of my mom, and it was great when you came to New York. And so Ariane was also part of the packing up with Paul Selinsky and getting everything sorted and on its way to you guys.
I just want to say, if there was film of the packing up, the 2 days, the marathon of packing up, I did nothing but sit at a computer and log things in. All of the physical work was everyone else. Ariane was such a trooper and described everything as it was being packed so that we could have an accurate accounting and history of her work. Okay, now you need to give Ariane back her headset.
Sure thing. Here you go.
I loved seeing that picture. Jose's humor was really so hilarious. The picture that you've got up there is
well, what it reminded me of is not only the brilliance of the color of the little possums hanging off the tail, but that his cartoon and style and movement was pure genius.
Yeah. I mean, and his humor was so subtle sometimes, but also so, hilarious. Anyway, that's a great picture.
It also reminded me a piece of advice that you were giving when we were kind of practicing this conversation. Do you remember saying to me, when in doubt, choose purple?
Yeah, well, yeah, I always, well, because sometimes I look at something and I have no idea. And so then I have a couple of times painted an elephant purple just because I couldn't think what else to do. You know, and I was tired of gray elephants. And so purple elephant once in a while is okay.
So this is just a screen grab, and we're moving time to the point where we were going to, I think, unless is there anything we hadn't talked about as you look at these pictures that maybe sparked something that you wanted to say about your work, about Jose's work, about children's book history, printing?
Oh, goodness.
Anything.
One could go on and on. No, I mean, it was just, well, we didn't say how we got into it really in the first place. And Jose had been doing, he liked drawing, and he drew and drew and drew. And I liked painting. So then he was doing cartoons, and that's a really hard business. And so he would sell every couple of weeks, he'd sell one cartoon. I think he sold one to the New Yorker and one to, but there were lots, and then he'd go around on Wednesdays, he'd pick up the cartoons from one place and take them to the next place. And it was just awful. So finally somebody at told him, you ought to be doing children's books. And so I think it was, well, anyway, so
I think
he decided
Playboy. Was it Playboy?
Yeah, it was Playboy. Yeah, and he said, if Playboy tells me I should be doing children's books. So we took, one of his cartoons, which was of a book came out called The King and His Friends, and the cartoon was a king sitting on a very elaborate throne. And then the king got up and walked away, and the throne unwound itself, and it was two dragons. And then, so we made a book of the king and his friends, the dragons. And when they went through a door, they decorated the door, and they made the banister for a staircase. And wherever they went, they made decorated it for him. And then we decided they needed to have an adventure. So they went out and they stopped a stampede of unicorns and solved that problem. So that was our first book. And then we were very lucky that Jose took it. I think the third publisher that he took it to accepted it. And then we got going on doing more.
Wow.
And we worked together for 37 years doing books.
Oh, we do have a few more minutes. I do want you to talk about how that worked.
Well, we'd get a manuscript, and Jose would, sit down and think about it, and then he'd come up with drawings, and then, take them to the, publisher, and the art director would, comment and whatever, and accept them. And then, in the beginning, then he'd bring them back, and I would paint them, and I would do a couple of pages.
Right, but after you didn't live together.
Well, I mean, lots of people work together. They don't have to live together.
So his artwork would go to the publisher and to the art director, and then somebody from the publishing house would deliver those to you, correct?
Yeah, or else I'd go over to Jose's and pick them up, or he'd drop them off to me. I mean, we were friendly. I mean, we would talk on the phone about stuff, and then Bob Krause, we did a lot of things with him. He and Bob Krause and Jose and I would meet together, and I'd show both of them what I thought, like that Leo ought to be a tiger, not a lion, and we'd all talk about it, and then go back, and everybody would do the work on whatever they were doing. But we everybody talked to each other all the time and showed each other, and
So it's
we
kind of like
worked
those
together.
rock bands. People split up, but the rock band stayed together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I think this is the perfect time. I think Eric is going. First, I say thank you. Thank you for being there, for your donations, for your life's work. It's just been a thrill to be able to go through the archives. I want to mention that the Children's Literature Research Collections, the Kerlan collection, is open and open access. So you make an appointment. During these times, we need a little more time, but you can come and look at this work at the University of Minnesota. We are open access. The other is thank you, Ariane, and thank you, Juan and Aaron. And I think Eric's going to come back up and ask some questions. Is that correct? And thank you, Rain Taxi and the Twin Cities Book Festival. And with that,
well, let me thank you for honoring my work like this. It's extraordinary, and I'm very honored that this has happened.
Okay, so Eric, you got any questions?
Oh, wonderful. Well, I want to add my congratulations to Ariane and my thanks to you both for this extraordinary look at an extraordinary career in children's literature. The other day, one of our readers was asking me, oh, the Kerlan Award, what will it be, a ceremony? And I said, no, it's better than a ceremony. It's a conversation. It's such a rich one. So thank you so much. We do have a few questions from the audience, and I bet that first one, it's one that popped into my head early on when Lisa pointed out that you have so many books to your credit, Ariane, that it's hard to even count them. Do you have a favorite among them, a personal favorite?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I mean, Leo's everybody's favorite, and it's ours too. But no, I don't know. It's hard because it always the one I was working on was the favorite,
Right.
And because you get all excited and into working on it. So I think the group of the Bob Krause books, the Leo and Herman the Helper, and Milton the Early Riser is one of my favorites, I guess. And in Milton, I have to tell because Juan's sitting here. In Milton the Early Riser, there's a picture of a little kid sitting watching. In the old days, when you turned on the television in the morning or in the middle of the night, there wasn't a program. There were just stripes of color. And so one time when Juan was very little, at about 5:30 in the morning, I heard him getting out of bed and going into the living room. So I went to see what he was doing. And he was sitting and he turned on the television and there were these spars. And I said to him, what are you doing? And he said, I'm waiting for the TV. So I put that picture got into Herman the Helper. There's a picture of the little kid sitting waiting for the TV.
That's great. That's great. A real piece of history, too. Lisa, is that your favorite? There you go. Well, let me remind all our viewers that many of the books that are in print and available by Ariane Dewey are available on our Buy the Books page. So if you just click over there, you'll see what our dear friends at Red Balloon Bookshop have for you to purchase. Another question about favorites is, because we're going to presume that as a creator of magnificent children's books that you've probably read a few other creators' works here and there. And do you have any favorites, either from childhood or from your ongoing, studies and practices of works that others have created?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I love reading them, and I don't know if I have, I don't remember, there were a couple of books when I was a child that I just loved, and I remember carrying them around. I mean, I barely put them down. I like them so much. And then there was, I had, one book was definitely one of my favorites was Stuart Little, because I had some ear problems, and the doctor that was treating me, his name was Dr. Stewart, and he used to poke around in my ear, which was pretty painful. And so the only way I could get back at him was every time I went to see him, I carried the book Stuart Little, because he was quite short. So that was my way at getting back at the doctor.
Wow. I wonder if you got the message. That's great. And this question is one, Lisa, you should feel free to jump in on too, but it's interesting to me because we had a session on picture books just last week, and the same topic came up that nowadays, quite often, authors of picture books don't choose the illustrators of those books. And so
Hardly ever. Yeah.
Right. So we're curious what you think about that that practice, and as someone who works so intimately in the authorship of these books.
I'm just gonna, as a teacher and teacher from these materials, that is still the practice, but there's a good marketing reason for that. For example, if you go through the publisher's letters to Ariane Dewey and to Jose Owego, or to other writers, they've selected famous illustrators because that will sell the book. The next book by Ariane Dewey is going to sell the book, not the unknown writer, Mira Ginsburg. And then as her name gets more and more famous, then they'll choose maybe an unknown illustrator because her name will sell the book and the unknown illustrator will get a boost up. But if you have an unknown illustrator and an unknown writer, I'm a bookseller, I got to sell books.
Interesting. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Ariane?
No, a lot of the things were financial. I mean, when we're talking about the books, how many colors they could have, 2 colors or full color, it was all financial. And the reason some of the early books only had 2 colors or 3 colors was because it was a lot cheaper. And now I think it doesn't really matter. But back then, it made quite a difference to the publishers. So if they thought the book was really going to sell, then they would let you have 4 colors. So, we had to work up and prove that we, were doing stuff that was going to sell. And then we got more color.
That's fantastic. More color. You've heard it here first. That is what happens when you work hard and work your way up. I love it, and I think I want to thank you for all those brilliant and beautiful colors in all these amazing books, and congratulate you again on receiving the Kerlan Award. The Kerlan, once again, is such a treasured institution here in the Twin Cities, and as you all heard, curator Lisa Von Drasek invited everyone who might come to our fair part of the world to make an appointment and see for yourself what an amazing place it is. With that, I want to thank you both and thank our viewers for watching tonight, and to remind them that we have other great festival events coming up, both children's literature and otherwise. We'll put a link in the chat so you can take a look at the schedule there. I want to thank also our festival media sponsors, Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, Minnesota Public Radio, the Star Tribune, and Twin Cities Public Television, as well as, again, the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council and the Minnesota State Arts Board for their support, which comes from legislative appropriations from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. See what magic can happen when you vote. Thanks again to everyone for watching, and to you both for this extraordinary conversation. Good night.